Greetings, my wonderful Jellyspoons, and welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where I talk about anything and everything. Don't check the date. I am in fact doing a new video. It may seem very similar to the video I did last week, but there's a different backdrop, so it's totally a different thing. So, last week I showed you my cosplay vlog where I created this cosplay, the cosplay of Count Lilac, the Lilac fairy from Matthew Bourne Sleeping Beauty. This week I've edited it, so I've gone back in. The jacket now fits me better at the back, as you can hopefully see now. And today I had no helper. I had to put these wings in by myself. That was difficult. So, what am I doing today back in the same costume? Well, apart from taking photos and videos of myself in it now fitting me much better and looking much more accurate to the original costume that I was taking inspiration from, what am I doing dressed as Count Lilac for a second week in a row? Well, if I can do Race the Magia and Dragonlance content several days in a row, I think I can do this as well. So, today I'm going to be talking to you about the production of Matthew Bourne Sleeping Beauty. And this is because right now it is available to watch in the cinema. There is a DVD if you want to. There is a DVD that you can purchase. It is also available to watch for free on YouTube right now. I definitely recommend watching it on YouTube and then buying the DVD like I did. And if you can, go and watch it in the cinema. It's in the cinemas for another sort of week or so, I think. I managed to catch it last week and it was truly spectacular. And so, to celebrate this timing, I would like to show off my Count Lilac cosplay, because this is one of my favourite things I've ever made. And also talk to you about Matthew Bourne Sleeping Beauty and why it is just so fantastic. It's also a pretty good way to end Pride Month. I know that we are in July now, but there are lots of Pride parades still happening around the country, and Pride is, you know, for all the time, not just a month. We all have pride in ourselves in this community, but it's a good way to wrap up the month by talking about Matthew Bourne. And that is because pretty much most of Matthew Bourne's shows and productions are very LGBT friendly, if not have LGBT characters right there in the forefront. And the first time I saw Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, I was about 17, and I realised quite a lot about my identity because of Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake. So, yeah. I'll talk to you about his other productions right at the end, just so you guys can have a little rundown of other things that I totally recommend. But in the meantime, let's do it. Let's talk about Matthew Bourne's Sleeping Beauty. To start this video off, I'm going to be a little bit of a theatre kid. Okay, a little bit of a theatre kid. Why the heck do I love Matthew Bourne? Because I am so much of a theatre kid that I have a favourite choreographer. I discovered Matthew Bourne for the first time when I was 17 years old. I was doing my A-levels and I was studying performing arts. I was a theatre kid. Originally I was just going to study drama, but I was convinced that I would really enjoy the performing arts course, so I took it. And I am not kidding you when I say I was terrified. I was a drama kid. I did plays. I had never done a musical before. I'd barely even sung in front of people. I was convinced I could not dance. I was 100% certain that I was going to fail most of this course and only pass the drama theatre sections. However, very fortunately for me, I soon discovered I was completely wrong, and actually I had a passion and a love for musical theatre, and very specifically for dance. Now, I am not the best dancer. I can learn choreography, I can do some moves. If you bear with me long enough, I can learn it enough to stumble my way through a show, but I'm not a dancer. However, I got a passion for watching dance and productions when I was 17 years old because our wonderful teacher for the performing arts course sat us down in one of the dance portions of the course and said, right, today we are going to sit and we are going to watch Swan Lake by Matthew Bourne. At this point, I had heard of Swan Lake. I knew it was a ballet. I'd never really seen it. I vaguely knew the music, as we all do, but that was about it. So we sit down all together in the dance studio, the lights are dim, the TV comes out on its little rolly tray because it was the early 2000s, and the teacher pushes the button and the show begins. And I watched the entire thing, enraptured and hooked. I watched the entire show from start to finish. I didn't take a single note, I didn't talk to anyone, I just watched Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake with Adam Cooper playing the Swan. And I immediately went home and ordered the DVD as soon as the lesson had finished. There are very few things that will make me truly emotionally cry in this world, and one of them is the ending of Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, when the swan is cradling the boy prince and they're up in the moon-flooded window. Every single time that will get me just, oh. When I watched Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake for the first time, it was the first time that I had ever really appreciated dance as an art form, and not looked at a dance production and immediately thought that it was worlds beyond my capability of understanding. Dance was very intimidating to me as a theatre kid who was used to just acting my cares away. I was absolutely terrified at this notion of dancing, and the fact that we would have to do some dancing in order to pass my A-level. But as I sat there watching Matthew Bourne's choreography with the flex feet and the interesting arm positions and the characterization and not just the typical ballet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions, I watched them tell a story, and more to the point, the story truly came alive. And beyond that, I was also watching two men play the principal love interests. The swan was a male, played by the dancer Adam Cooper, and the prince was also a male, and these two fell in love and had a love story. And at the end of the story, they go off together. And that was it. My first proper introduction to dance through Matthew Bourne Swan Lake, and I was hooked. I was sold completely, not just on, oh, musicals and dance could actually be something I could enjoy, but also this is something that's accessible to me and people in the queer community as well. So that then is my answer to the question, why Matthew Bourne? Why this company in particular? Why this choreographer? Because it quite literally changed my life when I was just a little itty-bitty 17-year-old moku and had no idea that the world of dance could be something I could in any way enjoy or relate to. But now let's talk about Sleeping Beauty in particular. So I'm going to give you a very brief rundown of the plot to start off with. And no, it's not quite the Sleeping Beauty story that you may remember. Now, Matthew Bourne Sleeping Beauty is described as a Gothic romance, and that is definitely true. There is a king and a queen. They have a beautiful daughter called Aurora. There is a dark fairy who, enraged at the royal family, curses their daughter Aurora to die when she pricks her finger. The first slight deviation comes in the exciting change of a rose being used instead of a thimble. Sleeping Beauty in this production will prick her finger on the thorn of a rose. The fairies who have been blessing the Princess Aurora all gather around to try to fix this curse that's been placed upon her. And this is where we have another deviation. So at this point, Count Lilac, the king of the fairies, that's me, Count Lilac, the king of the fairies. Count Lilac is replacing the character of the Lilac Fairy, who was originally played by a female dancer, in this version played by a masculine dancer. So Count Lilac is the king of the fairies. He is a vampire fairy, hence the fangs. And it is Count Lilac who manages to change the curse, so Sleeping Beauty, instead of dying, will instead sleep for 100 years. As we follow Aurora growing up, the dark fairy dies and her son is left in her place. Editing Morky jumping in right now because the camera cut out when I told you this next bit. So the character of the dark fairy and of her son are both played by the same male identifying dancer, and if that's not just another example of how friggin' fantastic Matthew Bourne and their company are, I don't know what is. So yes, the role of the evil female fairy and of her son are both played by the same male dancer. Oh, I love it. Oh god, my tooth is gone. Ah, I lost a tooth. Ah, get back in my mouth. Get back in my face. I don't need them to do this video, but they're in my mouth now, so okay. We then get introduced to a wonderful new addition to the cast. This is a character called Leo, and he is the royal gamekeeper. He and Aurora have a blossoming romance, and by the end of the show, you know that Leo is her one true love. However, just as the young lovers are having a tender, sweet moment, the son of the dark fairy arrives. His name is Caradoc, and he is carrying a dark purple rose, which he manages to get to Aurora, and she pricks her finger and falls down onto the ground. Leo is in despair as Aurora falls into her fated slumber, and she will be asleep for many, many years. But because he loves her so much, Leo wants to wait for her. And so Count Lilac, the vampire fairy, bites Leo, turning him into a vampire as well, so that he may be there when Aurora wakes up in 100 years' time. We then travel forwards in time. It has been 100 years. The palace walls and gate have been grown over with ivy and vines, and Leo has now been camped out there in a tent. You can see how the time has changed to modern day in the outfits that all the dancers are wearing, and there's a very sweet moment where one of them has a phone to try to take pictures. Leo emerges and he's got his little baby vampire wings, and he knows that now is the time and he can go and wake up Aurora. Count Lilac appears to usher him inside and leads Leo through a dreamscape of half asleep, half awake people as he makes his way through the palace and the gardens to find his one true love, Aurora. However, there is someone else who has been waiting for Aurora to wake as well. This, of course, is the son of the Dark Fairy. Caradoc has been waiting beside Aurora's bed, and he is determined to have her. So much so that when Leo and Count Lilac arrive and Leo places true love's kiss on Aurora's lips, waking her up, Caradoc gets his minions to drag Leo away. So he is standing there when Aurora opens her eyes, and he tells her that he is her true love, and she must go off and go with him. Caradoc leads a bewildered Aurora out of the palace and prepares to marry her, and other things as well. But as the scene changes into this very red wedding, which is an apt description as well, actually, there are a couple of uninvited guests. And we see that Count Lilac and Leo have managed to track down the wedding, and they are here to rescue Aurora. At first, it does look as though it is just going to be a wedding, with Caradoc and Aurora preparing to wed. However, then Caradoc comes back with a huge blade and prepares to stab Aurora in vengeance for his mother's death. But just in time, Leo and Count Lilac jump in, grabbing Aurora, taking her out of the way, and Count Lilac turns the blade on Caradoc himself, stabbing him over and over again until the villain is dead. And then we have the happy ending, where Leo and Aurora go off together, and Aurora becomes a vampire as well, and she gets her own little baby vampire wings. And then, right at the end of the show, Leo and Aurora are shown to have their own baby, who is also a vampire with its own little baby vampire wings. And they all live happily ever after. It's a Matthew Bourne production. It is never going to be what you expect. It is also never going to be boring. I love what they did with this story. I love what they did with this show. Number one, I'm obsessed with the costumes. This is why I had to create my version of this one. I love these costumes. Getting to see them in the cinema on 4K resolution on a massive screen was one of the best moments of my life. And every time Count Lilac came on the screen, I was grabbing my partner and going, "That's him, that's him, that's him!" And my partner was going, "I know, I was there when you put the costume on yesterday." It was very exciting for me to see this costume in particular, but also all the other costumes are just spectacular. In every Matthew Bourne production, the costumes have always been top tier. The costumes in this and many other productions are designed by Les Brotherston, whose work I admire so incredibly much. I particularly like the little hints to the Swan Lake costumes. Two of the evil henchmen, they wore these black swan-like feathery tattered sort of pants, and they were very reminiscent of the swans in Swan Lake. So that made me really happy to see because I love those costume designs. Now, I am not a professional dancer. I did study dance a little bit, mostly Matthew Bourne to do my A-level, but I am not in any way qualified to really talk about dance that much. So what I will say is that part of what makes me love Matthew Bourne so much is that you don't, as an audience member, need to know very much about dance in order to enjoy it. It is a beautiful spectacle, and it's not just ballet. So if you're worried that you're not going to enjoy the shows because, oh, I'm not really into ballet or classic ballet, don't worry, it's not like that at all. It's modern and contemporary, and it's characterful. Like, if you go to watch Swan Lake, they've got the swans dancing and they're doing beaks. And in this, you have the fairies holding candles and flapping their wings and looking creepy and eerie, and it's fun and chaotic and wonderful. There are moments where you are laughing as an audience, and you're supposed to, and it's just got so much joy and character and flavor. There is different styles of dance as well. You're not just going to see ballet. You're going to see, as I said, modern contemporary. You're going to see waltzing. You're going to see so many different things. There is always something new to look at, and the dancing just continues to get better and better and better all the way through the show. The biggest thing for me then about watching a Matthew Bourne show, and in particular Sleeping Beauty, is the storytelling. They use the costumes, the sets, the dancing, all of that put together to tell this story, and it is in dance form. Now, in the filmed version, there are some title screens that pop up to let you know that it's been 100 years and that the date has changed, that kind of thing. But if you were seeing this without those title screens, or in the theatre itself where these shows originated, you would have no problem knowing. You do not need speech or dialogue or writing or anything. You don't need to have that information told directly to you, because through following the story, you get it immediately. When the time period changes, when the characters age, when things are happening, you know exactly what's going on. And that is the biggest thing for me about Matthew Bourne. Yes, it's LGBT inclusive, hella yes. Yes, it's modern and contemporary and interesting and a visual feast for the eyes. Yes, Les's costumes and set designs are friggin' fantastic and I will never ever get enough of it. But there is just so much storytelling in these shows that is so spectacular. You've got it in Swan Lake where you can see the swans, even though they are humans wearing fuzzy legs. You believe it. You believe it 100% that they are swans. And in this, you believe that the vampire fairies are vampire fairies, and the evil vampire fairies are evil vampire fairies, and the humans are humans, and the royals are royals, and the gardener Leo is not a royal. He hasn't been brought up that way. Every single person, while dancing spectacularly and beautifully, is also fully engaged in their character. And when I was doing research into this show, I was really delighted to find out that the characterization actually came quite a lot from the dancers themselves as well. So when they took on a role, they were allowed a lot of creative freedom. They could make it their own. They had a lot of input into the choreography and what their character was like. And you can definitely see this coming through, particularly in the fairies. Now, it would be very easy to have all the fairies sort of blend together and seem as one, but they don't. Particularly the character, I love this name, Tantrum the Fairy. You could see, I didn't even need to remember the name of this fairy, I just watched it and went, yeah, that's Tantrum. You can see all this characterization coming through. They are a close-knit band, they are a group, they are all very clearly the good vampire fairies. And you can see this in all the moves and the way they hold themselves and sit and stand and things like that. But also, they each have a distinct personality and character. And it's just fantastic to see. You also, of course, have the blossoming romance between the characters of Leo and Aurora. While I was watching them dance, I couldn't help but be taken back to watching Matthew Bourne's Edward Scissorhands as well, because there is a classic moment in that show where Edward is up and he's making the snow appear from out of this ice sculpture, and then Kim comes on and they have their dance together. And that duet at the end of Edward Scissorhands has always been one of my favorite dance pieces to watch. And while I was watching Leo and Aurora dancing in Sleeping Beauty, I was having those same feels. It was giving me the same emotion and grit and care and love and creativity and a little bit of sort of quirky whimsy as well. It was absolutely gorgeous. The evil fairies too did a fantastic job of putting all the creepy evilness into their moves, even when at one point 2 of their fairy henchmen were wearing hoodies and masks and you could barely see any of them. They couldn't do any characterization through their faces. It was all coming through their moves and their movements. That was fantastic. That was really, really good as well. Oh god. At this point, I couldn't not mention the wonderful people playing the palace staff. When I tell you these characters stole the show every time they were on, I am not exaggerating. You have Aurora's nanny, you have the footman, Aurora's maid. They are all just spectacular. They are fantastic. Their characterization never wavered for a second. You knew exactly who each one of these people are, and every time they were on screen, it was an absolute joy to watch. In particular, Aurora's nanny. Her facial expressions got me every time she was on screen. Mwah. Fantastic. A very brief rundown of the other productions that you definitely should see if you can by Matthew Bourne and the New Adventures Company. Edward Scissorhands, Dorian Gray, The Nutcracker, The Carman, Romeo and Juliet, Swan Lake, and many, many others. So if you get a chance, please go and check out the DVDs or find them on YouTube, or if you can, go and watch these shows live in the theatre. They are just spectacular. So I think on that joyful note, I will wrap up this video here. I hope you guys are at least a little bit curious to go and watch either Matthew Bourne Sleeping Beauty, purely based on my cosplay of course, or just watch some other Matthew Bourne shows. There are plenty available to watch on YouTube. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, there are wonderful clips available, particularly of Swan Lake, and you can see some of Edward Scissorhands as well. If you're not completely ready to sit down and watch a 2-hour dance show, I can understand that, but if you just type in Matthew Bourne, you will find many different clips and compilations of videos and things. Type in Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, Matthew Bourne's Edward Scissorhands, the Nutcracker, anything like that. You will find so many wonderful clips and things that you can watch as well. Alright, my wonderful Jellyspoons, please, please, please go and watch some Matthew Bourne. If you can go and see it in the cinema in the next week, please do so. It is so, so worth it. And in the meantime, let me know your favourite dance shows. Tell me those down in the comments below. If you have a favourite dance show, a favourite dancer, favourite choreographer, have you seen any of Matthew Bourne shows? Let me know in the comments down below. Alright, my wonderful Jellyspoons, have a wonderful rest of the week. I'm going to be picking the theme for July very, very soon. And I'm going to try and get out of this cosplay, although I really don't want to because I absolutely friggin' love it. Alright. Oh, I lost a fang. Oh no! Fang down. Fang down! Ah! Alright, my wonderful Jellyspoons. My fangs are falling out. So I'm going to take that as a sign to finish the video. Have a wonderful week, my wonderful Jellyspoons. Goodbye. Fuck. I just want to dance in the ballet! I just want to dance in the ballet! I just want to dance in the ballet!